We are good. Okay. So, hi everybody. Welcome to um, tonight's discussion. Allison said she didn't have any sound. Okay, that makes total sense. Can you hear us now? Can everybody hear us? Yeah. Okay. So I'm Chana Ross from Vital Physiotherapy and Wellness, a pelvic health physio, and I'm the director of Vital. And I'm joined tonight by Dr. Jodi Larry, and I'm going to apologize to Jodi in advance because I'm just going to keep calling her Jodi, but she is Dr. Jodi Larry.
Either way.
And this evening sort of came about because we've been having multiple discussions, the two of us, in our deep dive real life, talking about the nervous system and its response postpartum, and all the deep work that Jodi's really done with Brene Brown's work, and just how much overlap there really is, and how we spend a lot of time talking about postpartum recovery, the physical. We talk a lot about mental health aspects in terms of like whether you're diagnosed with postpartum anxiety or depression, but there's a whole other element, like there's like a heaviness almost to the postpartum recovery that needs to be addressed, and that has real physiological ramifications, and mental health ramifications. And if we don't start talking about them, they're really going to hold us back as people and as a society. So, Jodi, do you want to just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about why you're the perfect person to really be talking about this with us?
Thank you, Chana. So my name is Jodi. I'm a naturopathic doctor. And I was actually thinking about tonight and what I wanted to share, because I was saying to Chana that I think we should share, personal stories versus just education, especially if it's going to be like a more intimate group. I'd rather us share, our personal stories. And I'm assuming that most people on this call are early postpartum or just had young babies. Yes? Babies under, yeah, you guys have.
I say you're like, once you're postpartum, you're always postpartum.
Okay. Anyways.
My youngest is 2. I
was thinking back on where I was postpartum with my first as opposed to my second. And with my second child, I had started to practice self-compassion. I started to practice this work. And our relationship is so different. And with my first, I didn't know any of this. When I had my first child, I thought I had to like pop a kid out and then get back to work and like pretend to do it all. And I couldn't take a break from naturopathic medicine for 1 minute because God forbid. And it's like, if I could have done it all over again, I wish that I realized that, who I am as a human is who I am as a human. And going through motherhood and all those changes didn't change that. And I wish I would have trusted myself more and loved myself more through that process, so I didn't have to run so fast out here trying to do it all and then actually make myself sick. And I made myself so sick after my first, working so much and trying to figure it all out, that I had to change when I had my second child. And I learned about self-compassion as a practice, and it really changed everything. And while it's a constant journey, the balance that we all want, this balance, I don't know, like I can't say for sure I found this balance, but what I can say is that I'm showing up in motherhood and in professional life from a place of worth. And that, it just changes so much. It just changes so much. So I just want to share that story. That's me. I want to talk to you guys tonight about self-compassion. We're going to get into it. I want Chana also to share about, what she would tell her postpartum self if she could change things over, because I think that's a really important point. But we're going to talk about self-compassion, how to practice it, how to utilize it, how to bring it into your life, because it's just as important as exercise. It's just as important as food and nutrition. And the truth is, from what I've seen, those pieces don't even happen without it. So it really is the foundational ingredient for any change in health.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I have 4 kids, so I've been postpartum 4 times. I've been postpartum my whole life, basically. Um, I have a mentor, and she says, we're human beings, we're not human doings. And I would say for the majority of my life, I placed my value on the things that I did, on what I could accomplish in a day, and how many, items I'm checking off my list. And I'm not just saying like, doing my laundry, but like, running my practice, hiring people, do like, my after even my 3 days postpartum, I was still, I was running Zoom meetings. Even before COVID, we ran meetings on Zoom, go figure. Um, but, and, at the end of the day, um, one of the biggest aha moments, we can use like an Oprah-ism here, was really like that saying that like if you're running on empty, you're not helping anybody. And the idea that that if I was going, I have 3 girls, and I have a boy, and this like idea that if what I am, kids learn by what they see and what we say, and that if I'm demonstrating that like my kids have value every single day, and I'm telling them how amazing they are, how I love them, and how smart they are, and then what I'm demonstrating is they have value up to the point where they become a mother, then I'm showing them nothing. I'm telling them that their value is confined to a certain time in their life. But if I can learn to love myself and find value and worth in me just being, not just what I'm doing, then what I'm demonstrating to them is that like they actually have worth, and that there isn't an expiration date on that. And so that like it took me 4 kids to figure it out, but and we're all works in progress. But at the end of the day, um, if we should be doing this work because we should be doing this work. But if we need a reason to do this work, at least let this reason be so that we can teach our kids what we wish we would have learned back in the day, not just that your value is what you produce and what you demonstrate that you are. You have inherent value because you have inherent value. And so like Brene Brown's work, like I've been reading the books, but like it's like that was a great book, and then I put it down, and then I went about continuing on, burning myself from both ends. And it wasn't really until, let's say, a year and a half ago where I really started to look into like why do I feel like I'm a hamster in a hamster wheel? Like I just kept like spinning my wheels. And it wasn't until like I started to like take a step back, and obviously with mentors and teachers and and guidance, that I started to look at, well, if you're not loving yourself for just being who you are, and you're loving yourself for all these other, like this checklist of things that I have to be in order to love myself, then that's not like that. I'm not going to teach my kids. I'm going to keep on. I will never fulfill that list. That list will continue to grow. It's like every other to-do list, every other list that we have in our life. Like, and if we don't take the time to actually, like, it's funny because I tell all my clients this, like we create our long-term goals and our short-term goals, and we celebrate each one of our short-term goals, because I'm like, if we don't celebrate them, then we're gonna lose motivation, and we're not gonna get to where we need to go if we just have this lofty goal. And all I had was that lofty goal, and I just kept on adding things that needed to get there before I reached that spot. And so in starting to, I mean, I'm a work in progress, guys, so let's be honest. But in starting to do this work, what we realize is celebrating every single one of those wins, like valuing pieces of ourselves, not just what we're doing, is that is the work.
Yeah.
So you did this Brene Brown training. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. I'm just curious by a show, like, do you guys know in the chat who Brene Brown is? Does anyone here know who you guys all do? Okay. Amazing. Love that.
Okay, can we also say in the chat, how many kids do you have? How far postpartum are you?
And also what I'd love to hear from you guys is, what is your current self-compassion practice? Do you have one? Do you even know what the hell that is? Like, you know, are you super critical? That's also important, I think, for us to know and illuminate, because then I can sort of speak to that. Because the truth of the matter is, in terms of self-compassion specifically, what I've learned from Brene herself was that self-compassion is not the human default. So it's not the human default. We are born, and most of us, unless we had parents who were like super hippies in the farm and like, you know, live their life in that way, most of us were conditioned to be self-critical, and we were conditioned to feel like our worth had to be worked for. So our worth and our value was dependent on what we did. So that set up a conditioning in our own brains of, I have to produce, I have to do, or else I don't have value. And that sets up a brain, all of our human brains, for a lot of suffering.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but this is the human default. This is across cultures, generations. Like, the research that Brene teaches us to then teach is based across all cultures and races. It's humanity. This is what all humans do. That's what's so cool about it. When you start to learn about it, you're like, wow, we're all the same. And if we're all the same, then can we start to relate to ourselves from love and curiosity in that sameness, versus criticism and judgment and, you know, hating that part of ourselves.
Right.
Okay. So the human default is not self-compassion. The human default is actually to be self-critical and self-judgmental. So if we can all accept that, then what we have to realize is that self-compassion, like physical exercise, is a practice. It's something that we do day in and day out, so that we can start to move more towards our default being self-compassion. Yes. But there's action in that.
So what sort of action is required in order to get there?
Well,
when you say there's action involved, what is that? And,
so when I say
Caitlin said that she's been learning about reparenting the work this year. Exactly.
Yeah. So reparenting is a big part of a self-compassion practice. But when I say there's action involved, what I mean is that a lot of people think that, you know, they can read a book or listen to a podcast or even take a course and like they're good to go, you know? But that's not going to ever change you. There has to be action, meaning you can't just like watch your critical thoughts and like have them float by. Like, that's not going to do anything. You have to actually be the one to see them and stop and take action, meaning bring self-compassionate thoughts to yourself. Talk to yourself the way you would talk to a friend. Slow down. Be with yourself in high emotion. Give yourself what you need. Rest when you're tired. Like, that requires action. It's not just about, oh, be self-compassionate, cool. Like, nothing happens in that. And it's not just something that you do once or twice or 3 times and then you're good. It's something that, so long as you want biceps, you do bicep curls. So long as you want self-compassion, you practice it day in and day out, because it's not our default. And over time, with enough practice, just like squats and bicep curls, you can lift more and it gets easier and you can add more strength and get stronger. It's the same thing with this, but there has to be action.
I was reading some research recently that it's not just about like acknowledging your thoughts and saying, I love you, like in your mind, that there's actually value to saying those words out loud. You can do that if you, you don't have to be around other people, or you can be, and you can demonstrate it so that they see and they learn it. But actually saying things out loud, like, Chana, you're amazing, or whatever. Like, when we go down this rabbit hole of the negative spiral, which we all have that tendency to do, it is fight or
Yeah.
flight. It's, that's our animalistic brain searching for danger. Like, life, maintaining your life, keeping us alive is like, that is the role of parts of our brain, right?
Yeah.
And so
Of
searching
course.
for danger, even within ourselves, that is, you're right, that is our default. So saying things out loud, like, you're not worthless, you're of value, but not even joking, like, but actually saying that out loud, it actually starts to change our neurochemistry even more than saying those things to ourselves in our mind, hearing
Yes.
ourselves say it.
Yes. And for those who have children, especially those with young children, I saw someone put there, I have a baby being cooked, that this is the best time, Robin, Robin's the smartest one out of all of us to be here. For real though. And to listen up when the baby's being cooked and she's listening to like how to be and how to parent. I wish I was doing this. I wish I was doing this. So good on you, Robin, number one. But number two, guys, if you can start helping your kids when they're in high emotion to teach them how to say things like Hannah was saying, I love you, you're safe here. Because our brains, when we're in high emotion, the human brain goes into a feeling of fear and unsafety and blame and hate. Like, that's just where all of us go. It's a human thing. So if you can know that and accept that, and when you see your kids going there, teach them how to say things like, I love you. Like when my 7, 8-year-old is like really angry and upset, when he's calming down, I'm always like, say, I love you, say, I love you. And he's like, he rolls his eyes, doesn't really get it. But I'm like, I do it anyways, because I want him to learn how to say nice things to himself after he's been in high emotion. I want him to learn that rote. Do you know what I mean? Like from a young age. So he just knows how to do that.
I love that. I love that.
So
nice.
We have to teach that to ourselves too.
Yeah.
And when we teach that to ourselves with action and we actually do that, then we can teach it to our kids, right? And then the younger you can teach it, the better, because then that becomes their default.
But even by demonstrating it, I think we're teaching it even more than even just saying it out loud.
Yes,
right? Like
for
when
sure.
they can see us actually loving ourselves, when they can see, mom's not eating last, or, do that, we're actually not like running ourselves ragged and taking care of ourselves and, doing all those pieces, then all of a sudden they understand that we have value as well.
Yes. Yes.
Actions,
words, practices.
Yeah.
All of it is important. And the younger, the better,
100%.
And the truth is, like, you can say all you want out here, but if you're not really doing it in here, your kids will know it. Like, I have so many moms in my practice who have body image issues, and they have daughters who are getting older. And they'll say to me like, oh, I never say it out here. Out here, I tell my daughters that, it doesn't matter how they look and their value isn't dependent on their weight. But in here, I'm beating myself up. And I say to them, like, kids are smarter than that.
Yeah. 100%.
What you put in here is what you're teaching, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
So you better change this. If you want to change this first, because what you believe in here is what you are teaching, even if you don't say it.
Yeah. And let's take it a step further. Okay. The pain response, like our brain, the area of pain science has been exploding right now.
Yes.
And we know that it's incredible. And the pain is an output of the brain, meaning it's a danger signal. So we have an alarm system in our body. That alarm system is our experience of pain. your brain takes in information. It's called nociception. So it takes in information from all areas of your body, and it takes it in and it processes it, and it determines based on past experiences, how much sleep you've had, what your hormone levels are, like everything that's going on. It determines, am I in danger right now? And if your brain determines that you're in danger, you will experience pain. Period. It can be either actual danger, or your brain has been like, oh, the last time I was near something hot, I burnt myself. And so you'll experience pain, even if you just happen to be blow drying your hair right now.
Wow.
So when you're in pain, you're in fight or flight. Sometimes we experience it as pain. Sometimes we experience things as discomfort, aches and pains, like the different things we feel in the postpartum period are a lot of women just chalk it up to, well, I just had a baby, my body's weak, I'm stretched, I'm this and that, and all that is true. But there is never a time in your life where you are more in fight or flight than in the postpartum period. You are taking care of a child. You've just done, like, your body just grew for 9 months. You just delivered, like, the biggest athletic feat you will ever do is birth. Plus you're not sleeping, plus you're probably not eating well. It's a whole different experience. And now we're in a pandemic. So what happens when we're in this massive fight or flight is actually that we're releasing tons of cortisol, which inhibits our body's ability to recover. You're not laying down collagen. Your body's processes to rehabilitate happen when you're in rest and relax. And so one of the most important things that we can do postpartum to compensate for this, oh my God, I don't know how to sleep train. Oh my God, I don't know how to breastfeed. There's all of these things happening. We're just struggling to get all of this stuff done, is to actually start to say to ourselves, you're doing a great job. You're loving your baby. You're doing amazing. Self-compassion is the way to, it's, again, and it's not a quick fix, right? This isn't a bullet, it's not going to happen overnight. But while we're in this, again, this hamster wheel of all the things I should be getting my baby dressed every single day. I should be feeding this number of times. I should be sleep training. There's like a million things that you should be doing. Plus we happen to be in a pandemic right now. Like, our bodies are in this overdrive or fight or flight, and we're experiencing more symptoms, and we're not giving our body the time to heal. And so if we just, like, one of the most important things, and like I always say, the hardest part about being postpartum is that you're postpartum. So like, it would be so great if we could just, like, take care of ourselves and feed ourselves, except that you have a baby and your baby body just went through this huge thing. And so if we just, like, self-compassion it's simple, but it's not easy. But if we just start to take these steps to care for ourselves from a place of love, right? And stop, we're always looking to outside of ourselves for feedback that we're a good enough mother, that we're doing, that we're doing all of these things right. Like, let's start with, like, within ourselves to really take care of ourselves. All of a sudden, we start to bring down this massive, almost like hyper-vigilant nervous system. And we can start to actually create healing. Just think it's, like, the most important thing that we could be doing. And I don't think anybody's talking about it.
It's true. And I love that you just brought the science into it, because there is so much scientific backing around, like you said, the nervous system and being in that fight or flight versus being in the rest and relax. And when you're being critical, you are pumping your cortisol. Yeah. You are bringing that nervous system up by your criticism, by your not enough, by your shoulds, all of that, right? So there literally is scientific evidence to this practice. As soon as you bring love and calming and soothing, your whole system relaxes.
Yeah.
So if it seems like, like you said, like this woo-woo concept, just think about the science. Like there's pure science there. And use it as a tool to calm and relax your system where you'd normally be critical and beat yourself up and get yourself worked up.
So what are
So important.
somebody wants to learn this practice? Yes, it is as simple as being like, I love you, and starting to acknowledge what your negative thoughts are. But if that feels like almost too big for people, like what are a couple of steps that we can start to take in order to move the dial in that direction?
Yeah. So there's so much. I think the first step for any change is awareness. I think people have to become aware of their mental self-talk. I think they have to become aware of how they treat themselves on a daily basis. I think they have to become aware of where they go when they're triggered, with honesty, like just without any judgment, with pure honesty. So the first step is awareness. Then when you can catch yourself where you normally would be critical, if you can catch yourself in that awareness, slowing down, and then literally, like, I wish it was more complicated, but the way it's taught is self-compassion, is treating yourself the way you would talk to someone you love, talking to yourself the way you would talk to someone you love. Like that is the practice. So where you'd normally kick yourself in the stomach when you're down, which is what most people do, right?
Called
They're
deep
down,
dark hole. We just like,
right? And then they just
right
kick
down
in
it.
right? But then we just kick in the stomach. We just kick ourselves. We want to teach ourselves how to fall and then extend a hand and be like, hey, Jodi, here's some love. Come here. I love you. I got you. I got you. I know that no matter what, there's a little girl inside me, and I've worked so hard so that she knows, like, I got her. No matter what, I got her. It wasn't always this way, but I've worked towards that. That's the practice. The practice is being there for yourself when you're in high emotion, when you're scared, when you're in fear, when you're in anger, when you're in pain, when you're feeling hopeless and helpless and in shame. And to really like be there for yourself the way you would your best friend. And when you do that long enough, over and over and over again, that becomes your default. But you have to push through this doesn't make sense, and I don't really believe this, and I've been beating myself up.
So weird.
Right? This feels weird. Of course it's going to feel foreign when you've been hating yourself for 30 years. You have to push through that. You have to push through. And it's like the first time you do 20 squats, it's going to hurt. But if you do the squats over and over and over, eventually you're like, I can squat, no problem. Like, bring on more squats. Self-compassion is no different. Yeah.
Like everything around us reinforces the fact that we should be self-critical. Like, I think that we are set up to be self-critical societally as well. So it's
yes and no.
I want to.
Yes, society sets us up. I think that's an important point. And that's why I think you as an individual have to be very mindful of who and what you consume and who and what you surround yourself with. And when you become really mindful of your surroundings and what you want to create in your life, then you also decide, like, maybe I don't want to stare at this. My husband is a CNN addict. He's a CNN addict. And like, we get in fights because I don't want CNN. I don't want to hear it.
Right.
I don't even want it near me. So, you have to also decide, like, if you go on Instagram, I know a lot of people talk to me about Instagram and they go on it and they feel bad about themselves after. Well, if that's the case with you, then you shouldn't go on it. You have to
follow the people who make you feel that
way.
Whatever. But that takes a whole other level, right? Like, if after Instagram you feel like garbage, starting to sift through the people that don't make you feel like garbage, like that might be like, you know, the next step, because that takes a highly critical um, perspective to start to say,
aware. It definitely does.
Yeah.
And that's why awareness is the first step.
Yeah.
That's why when you ask, like, there is no quick fix. Like with self-compassion, it takes a lot of work, and it takes, you know, going back to move forward. So there really is a process. Like in simplest terms, yes, it's talking to yourself as if you would talk to someone you love. That is what self-compassion is, and doing it over and over again until it becomes rote. Treating yourself, loving yourself the way you would love a loved one. You know, not hustling for your worth, not pushing yourself because you feel unworthy or working towards it. But to do it takes a lot of unraveling. And that's where, you know, the awareness comes in, and knowing about yourself so that you can write a new story. You know, if your story is work for your worth, produce for your worth, you have to know that to change it.
Right.
So there's no like simple, quick answer. It's a journey.
What are the most common stories that you hear in terms of like the negative self-talk? Like the
Body image, I would say, is like one of the top plagues of at least what I deal with. Body image is huge. Not enoughness, like just in general, not enoughness, like people just feeling not enough at work, not enough as a mom, not enough as a wife, just like not enough. Big. And I also see perfectionism as a pretty big epidemic, as well as hustling for worth. Hustling for worth. And not even knowing it. Like hustling for their worth and not even knowing it. Like when I was postpartum with my first, I didn't even realize that I was hustling for my worth until I got sick. And I looked back and I was like, whoa, Jodi. Like, were you that? Like, were you that? I don't even know. I don't want to use the word insecure, but were you that disconnected from who you actually were, that you had to run that fast and make yourself that sick to prove yourself? Like, it's like I look back and I'm like, whoa, I want to shake myself. But we all have to go through that, right? We all have to go through that to learn. It just is what it is. And that's why I think I'm on such a mission to teach people about self-compassion and all of this stuff that I didn't know then, so that they can learn it earlier, so that they can start really living, you know, and not running and hustling and making themselves sick.
Love it. Is this resonating with you guys? Getting some nods there. What's the story that you tell yourself? For sure, for me, it was hustling. I call myself a recovering perfectionist. I think Robin was saying, progress, not perfection. That was huge for me, right? That just, I think Sheryl Sandberg in her book, she said that on Google, like at their headquarters on the wall, it's like done is better than perfect. And for me, that was like a light bulb moment to realize that, like, yes, like just finish things and move on. I like to joke that like the bento box almost like ruined motherhood for me, because like all of a sudden, like we need to like make sure that we're setting things in reusable containers, and we have to have well-rounded lunches for our kids. And now I have to put it into a bento box, and now it has to even look nice. Like I was like, that's just sending me over the edge. Like my kids are gonna get food, they're gonna eat it, it's gonna be relatively well-rounded, and we'll call it a day. It's not going in a bento box. But that was my boundary.
Guys, I'm wondering if anyone has any questions before we sort of finish up. We did say we wanted to go 30 minutes, so we're a little bit over, but that's okay. I'm wondering if anyone has any questions specifically about anything that we've talked about, Chana or I. And if not any questions, what I'd love for everybody to share in the chat before we finish, unless Chana has anything to add, is what was the one piece that resonated the most with you? And what can you do even from this session? Okay, you showed up 40 minutes of your precious time. What can you do? What can you actually take from this? What can you actually do with what we just did in the last 40 minutes? So what was the one piece that resonated? And what can you actually do with it tomorrow or tonight when you go home? We are human beings, not human doings. Very, very true. What else, guys? And you can share either, like, you can share if you want to talk and unmute yourself, or you can share in the chat, either way. I just think it's important for us to connect the dots because, you know, we'll finish a call like this and then we go back to our life and it's like we go back. So it's important to really depict what it is that you took and what you hope to apply it. Saying things out loud and teaching my daughter to say, I love you out loud.
I love that also.
And when I mean that, it's like she's saying, I love you, right? Like inside.
100%. Yeah. I think that it's really, like I see a lot of women postpartum, you know, who are experiencing incontinence or prolapse or want to rehab their abs. And, you know, they've got a lot of like physical symptoms happening. One of the things that we end up always sending people home with breath work. And one of the things, it's from a book that I read, it's called like Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that I always send my clients home doing is, and by send home, I mean, even when they're virtual, they're just going to stay home, but still they're at home, is we send them home with a breathing practice. And so I'll tie that to, you know, something that's going to trigger them. So sometimes if they're feeding a young baby, we'll do 10 breaths every feed. If they're coming to me for some work around the bathrooming and toileting or incontinence, we'll have every time they go to the washroom, we'll have them do their breath work. And what we'll do is on the inhale, they'll say to them, they inhale and they say, I love you. And they exhale and they say, thank you. And they have to, every inhale, they tell themselves, I love you. And on the exhale, they have to think of another reason why they're grateful for their body and they're grateful for themselves. Because these physical things are not going to, or they're not going to rehabilitate unless they actually start to integrate the pieces that are going to allow their system to move into a healing phase.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm just reading these comments here. That's so beautiful, Chana. I love that breath work. I'm focusing a lot on how my body is failing me during pregnancy, but I'm going to start thanking my body for all it's doing for me, both and baby.
It's actually not feeling, it's doing like this amazing stuff. But it feels very out of control during pregnancy. And that's something that we don't talk about enough, is how things just happen, right?
And really, truly, Robin, you're so smart for doing this now. Mara wrote, I also like the idea of teaching kids to say I love you to themselves. We try to make sure we reassure them that we still love them, even if we don't love their behavior, i.e. learning not to hit their sibling, but then to teach them it's okay to love themselves, even though they did something they shouldn't have. It's pretty revolutionary. It's everything.
Yeah.
It's so everything, guys. And the other thing that is so important, and I think everyone will resonate with this, I hope, is that even when people outside of ourselves, if we're in pain and someone outside of ourselves is saying, I love you, it's very hard to feel and absorb their love, correct?
Yes.
When you're in pain or you're in anger, right?
You shut it down, right?
Exactly. So even if we're telling our kids, I love you, I love you, I love you, you're so beautiful, I love you, I love you. If they're not feeling that inside, like, it's falling on deaf ears. Yes. You have to teach when they can connect that. That was the missing link in my parenting. Yes. And I think that was the missing link in so much of our parenting. Yeah. Was that they were just like, I love you.
You have to say that, mommy. And she
right?
says it like to
Without
Robert or
teaching
to
them how to actually feel love for themselves and actually how to express that. It's so huge, guys. And the ones with the young kids, I'm telling you, the more you can put this in at the and make it a practice, like teach your kids, this will rewire the default. And I truly, really believe this is what's going to change the world. Like, I don't say it lightly. Like, I really do believe it in my loins. So it's our responsibility as parents, as leaders, as people with this education to start doing this for ourselves and others so that we can be part of that change. So we're not the default, because the default is why we're fucking here. Excuse my language. The default is why the world is the way it is.
Yeah.
We have to change that.
And I love it that everybody's like connecting so much with doing this with your kids. But at the end of the day, doing it with your kids is going to fall on deaf ears if you're not doing it with yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Demonstrate it, be this, and then teach it.
Yeah. So I said, and I suppose we should also model forgiving ourselves. I know this is easier to come at this from parents. I'm great to teach kids about self-compassion. Yes.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips on practicing self-compassion during a pandemic? I mean, practicing self-compassion is no different anytime. It's the same, no matter what it is that you're going through.
But understand that we're heightened, like it is much harder now. And yeah, you sort of
again,
starting.
So of course, like self-compassion is hard because anything that's not our default is hard.
Yeah.
Right? But pandemic or not, we have to start doing this right away. Like right away, because like Chana said, when you practice the self-compassion, your nervous system settles, and that's when you can start to heal. And so it's really, 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 really pertinent. Forgiveness,
kind of things that do rev up your nervous system, like the news, like you were saying.
Yes.
Cut out the news, people. There's no news. It's
Forgiveness.
all the same.
The forgiveness piece, I just want to also say in the comments here, is really important. Also, and yes, Mara, how do I say this? Teaching your kids how you deal with your mistakes is key. Because it will give them ability to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And it's really important. So yes, teaching self-forgiveness when you screw up, when you make mistakes, will allow them to also be easier on themselves when they screw up and they make mistakes. It's really, really important. You were asking Caitlin also about books, Brene books. So I think the best Brene books to start would be either Daring Greatly or Rising Strong. Both are incredible around, and Daring Greatly talks a lot about parenting specifically, but it will introduce you to this work, the research around it too, which I love. Like, I love that this work is so research-based. So also because you're an ND, like you'll find that interesting. So yeah, I would say, and in terms of affirmations, I think the best place to start with when you're trying to practice self-compassion, if it's not your default, is I love you, you're not alone.
So good.
Because as soon as you stop yourself and you say those words, I love you, you're not alone, right away your nervous system calms down. Because most people, when they're in high emotion, they feel alone and they feel like no one gets them and no one understands, and they feel very isolated. So if you can just shift that and just start there for months, something will happen, and then you can add on it. But for some people, they have to just start there. They can't even get into all the other stuff.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Okay. So just looking at the time, I think we should wrap up.
Okay.
If people want to learn more, I am running actually a Brene Brown workshop that is starting in a couple weeks. It's an online course and it's Rising Strong. It is the Rising Strong curriculum. I should have been smarter and had the link and put it right in there, but we can put it in the post information. You guys can also follow me on Instagram. I will put my handle here, and you can private message me and ask me also for more information on Instagram if you want to know. And I post a lot about self-compassion at nauseum actually on Instagram. So if you don't want to hear about self-compassion, do not go to my Instagram. I literally post at nauseum about it. But if you want to be inspired by it every day and it is something that resonated, then go follow me and we can definitely connect.
Jodi, thank you for hanging out with us tonight. I'm so appreciative. I feel like we need to be talking about this more and more and more. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. And please, everybody, go and follow Jodi. Come hang out with us at Vital. We love to hang out with Jodi as well. And if you guys love this and you're inspired by it, we are happy to keep going and do a couple more of these. So thank you everybody for taking the time out of your night to actually spend time taking care of yourselves. And we really, really appreciate it. And thank you. Have a great, great night.
Thanks, guys.